Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I haven't been on a FANG meeting in a while, so it's fun to be back, right? It's good to be back on Broadway, especially New York, right? I really appreciate it. Let me give you a little. So first of all, just because I will get pouring into this topic and then I will forget. If you want a pretty good overview of this, it's sort of an extension of my TED Talk and a good overview of the concept of bulletproofing. I did a podcast interview a little while back, and it just was published. And if you go to my activity after the call on my website, excuse me, my LinkedIn profile rather, I posted the TED Talk, excuse me, the podcast there. And I think it's a really, I love the gentleman that who does the podcast, really great interviewer and really good overview of the topic, right? Joyce and group asked me to kind of do a refresh of something that I did a few weeks ago in my Zoom calls. And if any of you aren't familiar, this will be, I think, week 220. It's either 219 or 220. I have somebody that announces it for me every week. 220 weeks of doing a 7:45 Zoom call every single Thursday. And it's the Bulletproof community. We usually have now between 400 and 500 on the calls. In the days of COVID, we had 950. So it's a very huge community. There's a very live chat and a lot of exchanging of leads and introductions going on in there. So if you are on the call and are interested, just ping me after at pat@bulletproofyourcareer.com, and I'll send you the registration link if you'd like to go on. But it's every single Thursday. And I started them in 2018. So we've been plugging along. And this is a topic tonight. The topic tonight is something that I cover every year at this time in those Zoom calls. And it really involves finishing strong. And the whole reason behind that is, if you didn't know, first of all, full disclosure, I was a psychology major. But when you give yourself sort of a finish line, and a certain number of days, and you really create some excitement around it, it really helps to get the juices flowing, right? And I really love to see the end of the year be a really strong finish. As I mentioned, if you were on the call a little bit ago, there's a lot of hiring that goes on in December as people are trying to get geared up for January and not have it on 2022's budget. So they get you in for the first of the year. So there's a lot that goes on, and I want to be sure that everybody's sort of geared up to be in that. In addition, there are some things that you want to be thinking about. So I'm going to cover things for those who have landed and also for those who are in full-time job search. And also what I really am hoping is that I really give you good momentum going into 2023. So I do this type of a topic. What I'm presenting to you tonight is the first of the topics, which is really how to get ready to refresh and recharge so that you finish strong. Because as you probably know, if you see anybody in the New York Marathon, they didn't get up the morning of the marathon, November something, I think it usually is, and just say, well, I think I'll run a race today. There's a lot of preparation. There's a lot that they do to get laid up to that. So that's what I want to cover tonight and really get you energized and recharged and ready for that. And tonight last week on our Zoom call, I covered how to empty out your email inbox, which seems very mundane, but it's an energy drain. And that's why I did that. And tonight we're going to talk about time management, but that's also disguised a lot about mindset and procrastination. So that's what we're going to talk about, but it's a continuation of this. Okay. So let me get started with the slides, and then I'm going to go through this as quickly as I can without sounding like I'm racing. But I want to leave some time also for questions at the end. Okay. Okie dokie. There we go. Okay. So and I really call this recharge and rethink, because there is some rethinking when I'm trying to fundamentally change your relationship to your career. There's some rethinking that has to go on, which is really what my whole passion and caused me to do that TED Talk, right? But one thing I always preface my presentations with for my Zoom calls, and I want to encourage you to, is please don't just listen. Take notes, but don't just take notes. I would love for you after this to block some time on your schedule and take action, no matter how small. And that's where you really benefit from the time that you invest in being here today. the first step in re-energizing and recharging is to take a break. And that may sound like crazy. I thought we were going to be hard charging through the end of the year. Well, the truth is that if you have been in a very putting a lot of pressure on yourself, which I so often see, whether you're currently employed and you're putting that pressure on in your job, or currently in transition and you've been just pushing. If you're going to have a final push that's going to be full of energy, you really need to stop. This weekend's just as good a weekend as any. We've got a beautiful fall day. Sorry, the Mets, there's no baseball to watch except for the Yankees, but it's still a great time. And so anytime you are getting ready for something that you really want to excel in, you want to speed up, the best thing to do is take a break first. You probably know, I was talking about the marathon athletes who train for a race. There's a rest day and there's rest days before the big race. When I did my TED Talk, one of the big counsel I was told was, be sure that you don't rehearse or do anything the day before the TED Talk. Leave it alone and then come in. Take a break from all of that, right? So that's the first thing, counterintuitive, but important. The other thing is creating boundaries. So if you want to find the time to really step up your activities and to really finish strong, and again, this is really about the prep phase, you want to create some boundaries, some places where you may have let your time be taken away from you as opposed to be in charge of your time, or maybe have wandered into some activities that are really expendable, at least in the near term. I was coaching somebody a few weeks ago when we first started, and she started telling me all the things that she was doing. And I said, can you just send me a list of all of the groups that you're volunteering for and all of those things? And the list was like maybe 8 or 9 things long. And she's trying to, has a family and trying to do a full-time job search. And we had to just say, look, these are all great things, and you can start those up again later. But right now, let's cull those out and really create a focus window. So if you're sitting here tonight saying, yeah, I've wandered some boundaries on some activities or time that I spend in other places, if you're going to re-energize and recharge and finish strong, you're going to have to put those boundaries back up. One of my required reading books that are required reading, I have 2 required reading books for my 12-month onboarding program that I do from Onboard to Bulletproof. And this is number 1, Atomic Habits. And it is very, very important. And you'll see a couple of quotes from this tonight. But if you haven't read or listened, it's a great book to listen to because he tells great stories. I also recommend that if you listen to it, that gives you a great overview, and then buy the book and really take your notes in it, because it's so rich. I have literally read this book 7 times because I use it all throughout my coaching, and I want to be fresh with the material with my clients. It's amazing. And the idea is that tiny changes are what produce remarkable results. So sometimes when you're getting ready for that final push, you want to think about, you may be thinking massive, not necessarily. Little tiny changes between now and the end of the year will give you the momentum that you need. And I also want you to recognize something, that what you get by achieving your goals is not as important as what you become by achieving your goals. So who we become when we train or prepare for anything, who I became as a great example of personal life, who I became as a speaker, preparing for the TED Talk, where it's going to live on video. It's one thing that Joyce wants to record me tonight, but my YouTube video will live on forever, right? That's my legacy. So you think about that and you raise your standards as you head for goals. And it's a really important thing to remember and the subtitle for this is, even if you don't achieve 100% of the goals that you set, who you become in the attempt to do that is just as important as if you actually achieve the goal. And people who set no goals have no journey that they're on that raises their standards on a regular basis. So that's an important piece. And in that process, therefore, detach from the outcomes and just commit to the process. I'm going to have some things and suggestions for you tonight, but it's commit to the process. If you set some goals and say, I want, I want to land by the end of the year, there's most of that is out of your control, other than the process of your activity level and the networking level and leveraging your network. Those are things that you're in control, but plenty isn't. So embrace the process. Don't focus just on the income, right? And this is James Clear, who's the author of Atomic Habits. This really really kind of sums up when you're trying to really engineer a strong finish. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your system. So if you're having trouble changing your habits, the problem isn't you. The problem is your system. Bad habits repeat themselves again and again, not because you don't want to change, but because you have the wrong systems for change. So last week, when I taught the work on inbox, I taught everybody a system to have continuous inbox zero, and it's possible. I worked with 2 productivity coaches to get to that point. And the first one got me almost there, but he was in Australia and it was too hard with the time zones. Second one, we got over the line and my inbox is inbox zero. And it's not just because I don't have the clutter in there, but it takes all of the distraction away from what's sitting in that inbox that drains your energy, right? So, but it doesn't happen just because you say, I'm gonna empty my inbox. I have a system now that does that. So that's what I want you to think about. So in beginning to prepare for things to get you ready for the end of the year and to start 23, where would systems help you maintain consistent momentum, right? So I can tell you that the systems that I created for my inbox have been a game changer, right? So that gave me consistent momentum. Now, here's some ideas of questions to ask yourself. Do you have a system for? So systems, Pat, what are you talking about systems? So do you have a system for starting and stopping your day? Later on in this presentation, I'm hoping we're going to have time, and I think we will. I have an outline for that, and I have a end of day, beginning of day, starting and stopping, but it's really important. If you don't, it all merges in and you allow yourself to just drain all of your energy, and your energy drives everything, right? Do you have a system for processing your email? As I just said, do you have a system for capturing to-do items? So one of the first principles of getting your inbox empty is to realize that your inbox is not your to-do list, but for many it is. I'll leave that there. I'll get back to it later. I have to handle that. That's not really a system. Do you have a system for following up after calls and meetings? So for example, do you have a system that when I schedule meetings during the day, either the end of that day, or if I feel like I want to do it when I'm fresher, that next morning, I've scheduled time to follow up for them. Then I don't have that burden of not following up on meetings. And guess what? I led sales organizations for many decades, and I had salespeople who were average salespeople with great follow-up skills, and I had great salespeople with lousy follow-up skills. Guess what? The first person who was not the best salesperson in the room, but was really great at following up and staying in touch, that was the person who exceeded their objectives far better than the sort of the tortoise and the hare, right? So when you make meetings and you set them all up and you don't have a system to ensuring that you are following up, and then the next point, staying in touch with those contacts, then you've really almost wasted all, if not, half, if not all of the time invested in those meetings. Growing your network every week. So I just recently on my Zoom call did a 5-part step-by-step program on cultivating and curating a network. And even in those 5 parts, I could have probably done 7, but I figured everybody was just about done with the topic, right? But that's how important networking is. And I know that from coaching over 900 people. That's where people really get the leverage into their opportunities. So just growing your network every week. And you notice I don't have a number there, but you have a system that says, I have a goal. Right now, I'd like to add 1 new contact in my industry, 1 new contact in this from my alumni, whatever the target is. And my system also is that this is how I'm going to do it. This is where I'm going to schedule it. And I'm going to increase that 1 per week till I get to the end of the year. And now I've got X number, however many weeks are left, not that many. And then next year, I go into the new year with that many new contacts, right? Are you finding and posting articles on LinkedIn? Why is that important? I have a client in Chicago, and she point blank, when I first started coaching her, she's in my onboarding program. And I said, look, there's certain, requisites in this program. And one of the things is you need to post once a week. Oh, that's not my thing. And she said, look, I go from resistant to interested, to believer, to evangelist. And I said, okay, well, we'll get you there. So with lots of encouragement, let's say, as a coach, I finally got her over time to start getting interested in posting. And she got on a call about 3 weeks ago, and she said, okay, I'm an evangelist now. I said, great, how did that happen? And she said, I have 2 interviews next week, and both of them are hiring managers who saw what I posted. One of them had liked her post for about a week and a half or so, sent her an invite, and the next minute, as soon as she accepted, said, I need to talk to you about this role. And it happens to be with E&Y. It's an amazing position, right? So a hiring manager at E&Y reading her articles and seeing her activity. She happens to be an expert in ESG. And he said, I really like your point of view about it, right? So it seems like a little thing. Posting every week raises your visibility across the whole network. And in her case, got her 2 opportunities, not just interviews, but opportunities that she's in process with. And then maintaining your health and wellness, right? Do you have a system for that? Because I will tell you what, whenever I have a high, lots of deliverables for myself, whenever my goals and my deadlines are really ramping up, the first thing I do is make sure that I increase my rest and I increase my health and wellness focus, right? Because I know that, I've got to put my own mask on first to be able to do it. That is not a cliche. If you don't feel like, oh, just my energy has been drained, before you even start thinking about how you're going to rest and how you're going to recharge, make sure that you have some kind of a plan to change something. And let's go back to atomic habits. If you say, yeah, I need to do something, maybe that one something is just 1 extra glass of water a day, because it will be make a massive impact over time with your energy level, right? So take those tiny steps, but don't ignore it. So think for yourself, where else could a system help you maintain momentum and consistency, because systems matter and they make the difference, right? So there's a wonderful YouTube video here. It's 10 minutes and 40 seconds. And I had never heard of Reggie Rivers. He's a former Denver Broncos running back. Maybe some of you know. They probably need him now. And he's this is a really funny 10-minute video, but it really helps you understand. It takes you back to 6th grade. It has nothing to do with football. It takes you back to 6th grade and understanding that focusing on your goals is not the way. It's focusing on the steps to get there that's the most important. So I wanted to pull that in. I want you to know how important clarity is. If you find yourself now in procrastination on when you know you should be doing something, if you think, yeah, this reminds me, Pat, I really need to be posting, but you find that when you go to post something on LinkedIn, you stop because you don't have clarity about what should I be posting? What's the topics that I should be posting on? What's my brand and how should I be amplifying it, which is what posting does? Then you don't have clarity. So I really talk to people all the time. When I first start coaching them, my number one piece of my 4 stages is clarity, right? So we have to know we're not just, this is what I want to do. The first question is, what does the market see in me, right? What do they see? What will they see I can do beyond what, like so I talked to somebody a few days ago and he said, well, I've been in risk in the banking industry in risk, but I really want to go into product management. Okay, guess what? Clarity is power. Clearly the marketplace is going to see you in risk because you've been doing that for 17 years. That doesn't mean you can't get where you want to go, but you have to have clarity about what you will have to do to get there. So I asked him this question. I said, rate your network in your own industry of what you do now on a scale of 1 to 10. He said, well, I'm not really good at that. It's a 2. Right? Now, for me, the standard is you got to be above 5 and 8 would be the perfect place to be. So he's a 2 in that. So I said, now give me the score of your network in the area that you want to move into. He said 0. Okay, here's some clarity. Without a network, to move from where you are to where you want to go is a huge, huge leap. So we have to have a different strategy for that than you would you're not going to apply to a job. You're not going to send out your current resume and have that work, right? On the other hand, here's some clarity. Doing product management inside of fintech, because of all of your experience over here, that could make some sense, but we still have to have a strategy for that. But we have to have clarity first. So here's some clarity. Here's some questions as you prepare for the finish of your year that can really help you. And these are questions you ask yourself. Where do I spend time on things I can't control? biggest frustration and biggest waste of time. We can't control the weather, but we talk about it a lot, right? But don't spend time on things you can't control. So what does it do? Slows you down. So you interview, you haven't heard back. They said we should have word by Monday. It's Tuesday. Now you start fretting about it's Tuesday. I haven't heard. Maybe there's something on. You have no control over whether they're going to call you. And you certainly have no control over the decision once you go in, interview, and you leave it all on the field like you should do and send your follow-up. Everything else is out of your control from then. But what it is costing you is opportunity cost, because you're dwelling on that rather than connecting with more recruiters, making more networking calls, and getting on to the next opportunity. And wouldn't it be great if you wound up with two, right? But too much time focusing on what you can't control. Where do I need to interrupt a pattern that does not serve me? For example, what I just said, every time I don't get a call back, I start to fret. When I fret, I take my eye off the ball and I don't keep doing the activities that I need to do to generate a new opportunity. That's a pattern. And you want to start just following and watching yourself. When we're in them, we don't recognize the patterns, but when somebody says, keep an eye on that, then you want to watch it. It's there for many things, but you have to pay attention and then say, oh, that pattern isn't serving me, right? Where do you need to double down? Right? What are you doing that energizes you, which is the number one criteria, as you can see down below, and is really producing results, right? So I really need to double down on the networking that I'm doing within the FEN network nationwide, because there's a lot more remote positions, for example, right? But decide where you need to double down. What are activities or thoughts that drain your energy? That's somebody, you letting something or someone steal things from you, right? Because your energy is everything. It's sort of like if you have a Tesla and you don't make it to the to the charging station, you're dead in the water. This is so important. Where do I spend time on things that are distracting me from the activities that will directly support me in my job search? Where could that be? Hello, let me show you something. I want to pop over quickly to something that somebody alerted me to that I follow. And let's see if I can find this. Hold on. It's a really fear-inducing to me, a fear-inducing study, but it's important when we talk about what I just shared to know this. Here you go. This is a study. The average American will spend, the average US adult will spend the equivalent of 44 years of their life staring at screens. If I said to you, I'm going to put you in solitary confinement or in jail for 44 years, my whole life, half my life will be taken from me. 44 years of their life staring at screens. This is a study that was done in 2020. I can imagine with COVID, it's probably higher. And this is all screen time. So it's your phone, it's your Kindle, any kind of screen. So some of that screen time is, it's work time, it's reading time, it's that. But 44 years of their life staring at screens. Really scary. And if you have a child, you'll know that I have grandchildren, and that number is probably a little bit higher for the younger adults, right? Where do I hesitate or get stopped? And that's what I was talking about before. So if you go to do something, you say, I need to send my resume, but I need to change some of this. I need to, anything like that that niggles at you when you go to do it, fix it. Get it cross that off your list so that you get that energy back from where it stops you. I need to, Pat says that networking is the thing. I need to get, more networking done, but I really hesitate. I think at the end of here, and if not, I'll send my other book list. Joyce, I'll create the Dropbox for everybody with some follow-up, but I have some great books that I recommend. So if you're getting stopped by this idea of having to network, then this is a good time between now and the end of the year to really put that demon to bed and get better at networking and understand the value of networking. And as you know, maybe if you've been on my calls, one of my favorite topics is that introverts make the best networkers because you listen better and you care more, and you just need to connect with fewer people, right? And not be drained. So whatever it is that stops you, fix it, get it out of the way. It's sort of like, every time I go to do this, my printer doesn't work. I actually have that problem right now. It just started. Get the printer fixed. Don't let things like that stop you. Where do I let perfectionism stop me? Perfectionism, make that list of things. It's the most futile thing in the world. It's right up there with can't control. You can't control everything, and you cannot be perfect. It's just not possible. Okay. What are things I do? And by the way, you can be excellent. And the journey from perfectionism to excellence exponentially increases your productivity and your ability to do more. So just a tip. What are things I do to avoid doing things I don't want to do? That's sort of a second way of asking, what do I spend time on it? So what are those activities? And say, I'm going to make a list of those. And when I catch myself doing them, now I'm aware of them. The power of a list is awareness. That's what we're trying to do. And then trying to attack atomic habit wise, at least one of those that's the biggest offender, right? And then eliminate. We talked about distractions before. Anything between now and the end of the year that really isn't serving you or could wait until next year. I could do this next year. I'm going to really use that time or that energy to finish strong, will give you the momentum that you need. Overthinking is a major drain. And I would love everybody to have this mantra on your mind. You either need to solve the problem or leave the problem. Don't live with the problem. I did not create this quote. It's in quotation marks and it's not attributed. And I usually attributed quotes. I have to tell you that I found this quote attributed to 9 different people. So I decided it was already socialized enough and it's just somebody, I should probably put unknown on here. So solve the problem or leave the problem, but don't live with the problem. It drains you. Don't, and in keeping with that, mindset is everything. And this is my quote: don't give your thoughts a free pass in your head. Stop them in their tracks when they're not serving you, when they're telling you negative things. That won't work. Don't pick that up. You tried that yesterday. It won't work. Any of those things that you're saying to yourself, which is really what it's really saying to you is, you're about to get out of your comfort zone. And the only way I can stop you is to say this to you. So that won't work. It didn't work yesterday. And that helps you, that keeps your self in your comfort zone. So don't give your thoughts a free pass. Build in movement every day, even if it's a slow stroll. There is so much science around. Isn't it funny that any kind of movement creates momentum? Hello. Any kind of movement creates momentum. So as you're looking to charge forward, and if you said, yeah, you know what, I've gotten, I was kind of busy in the summer and I lost some momentum. Atomic habit, even if it's one walk down one block, it's better than nothing, right? So when you're thinking about rethinking your career, what has fundamentally changed in the workplace and why, most of that is on, and I forgot I had put this link in there. That's the link to my podcast. The biggest thing that's changed is companies have fundamentally changed their relationship with you. If you haven't read the book, that's the just a scathing review of Jack Welch, and it's called The Man Who Broke Capitalism. And it's well done. It's by a New York Times writer. And it really explains to you exactly what is going on fundamentally and how he really did change the game. And he really changed the game to say, we're only going to serve the shareholders and the people in this company. We can tell them how important they are, but it's not really the real game. It's the shareholders or stakeholders or those. So it has fundamentally changed. It's very different from how employees were thought of. So what fundamentally changes on that side, it needs to change on your side. And the trickiest and perhaps the cruelest is past performance, no matter how great, is not a guarantee of future employment. Now, this is where, for those who have landed or when you land, it's really interesting phenomenon that happens, because I just also did a book club. Tuesday, I was a moderator for a book club that was started by some Zoom call people. And it was on the book, The Power of Moments. And there's something that is a truth in there that I'll explain. But in this instance, when you've been programmed all through your career, like work hard, you get out of college, you go do a great internship, you'll land your job. All of that was true until the rules changed. And then no matter how good you do, if we sell the company, we buy another company, if there's duplication, if there's disruption, whatever it is, it's not going to be what's going to carry the day, right? So it doesn't mean that you don't do a good job, but you don't get complacent to think, I'm doing a great job, surely I'm safe, right? If you listen to my TED Talk, in that TED Talk, I tell the story of somebody, true story. I actually modified it a little bit because I think I said over $1 billion in impact, and it was actually almost 2 billion. And it was somebody who worked for a very large very, very large retailer. And he created a whole new concept for them in their innovation group. And he was told by the CEO, what you have done has done two things for us. It's taught us how to scale our systems. It is actually creating a retail center in Manhattan that was unusual for that company to be able to do that on a different scale. And he said, you have added infinite value to this company because we now know we can scale up and down to any size footprint for our organization. Huge, right? And about maybe 4 or 6 months later, in comes a shareholder who wants to maximize the profitability in the company. He eliminates the innovation department because it's just costing him money. He only wants to stick with the knitting so that the profits pour out for the next 2 years while he's in the investment, right? And this guy comes to me for coaching. Past performance didn't matter, right? So I talk a little bit about it, quite a bit about it in the podcast. And again, all it means is having a different mindset. Now, I'm going to share with you on the power of moments. One of the things in the power of moments that makes this really tricky is that we tend to remember the peaks of things. So what do I mean by that? If you have ever gone to Disney with children or know anybody who has, and let's say the flight's delayed, the hotel doesn't have your room ready, you get there and the one ride you wanted to go on is broken and the other ride you wanted to go on, the line was, 2 hours long, nothing seems to be going right. And all of a sudden, Goofy comes up and pats your daughter on the head and shakes her hand and the whole world lights up. That's all she wanted at Disneyland. When you fly home and people say, how was Walt Disney World? Man, it was amazing. Susie got to see Goofy. It was amazing. They don't tell the other story. So we tend to remember the peaks. And guess what happens? You forget all of the frustration of a job search. You forget all of the doors you knocked on and all of the ghosting that you got shortly after you get into your new role. Because what you remember is the peak. I landed. I'm back to work, right? And therefore, it makes it hard once you're in there to remember, I did, but I have to remember that my past performance, no matter how great, is not a guarantee of my future employment. So you truly have to shift your mindset and accept the fact that you have to do certain bulletproof activities to maintain the ability to move rapidly, right? So that you never ever find yourself in that gap or in that transition again. It's not necessary if you do the right things. You're a free agent and you just need to change your habits. It's not that simple though. So you have to change them. That's why Atomic Habits is a requirement for my onboarding program. You have to change them incrementally, little by little by little by little, to the point where you displace the habits that corporate America created for you, which was just work hard, just work overtime, just take that trip to China, even though you don't want to go this week, you got to do that. And everything's going to be great until it's not, right? Not to be cynical, this is from coaching 900 people and seeing this. Every single week, I have another story that just adds to the foundational brick of this. Okay. So as the CEO of your career, here's some things to ask yourself. Have you scheduled time weekly for your bulletproof your career activities? Guess what? When I work with my clients, I tell them, listen, if you just do 15 minutes a week, that's what? An hour per month. That's 12 hours a year. If you do an hour a week, that's 52 hours a year. Most of them work up from Atomic Habits. We start with 15 minutes a week, and then we build up to an hour a week, and then we can pretty much leave it there and maintain what needs to be maintained. So I can probably guess that however many people on this call, that in your past, you didn't do 52 hours in a year of attention solely to your career, right? But think of the difference that your network would be when you leave. Think of the difference if you had a refresh and updated target list of companies, because when you're inside of a company, the ability to find out the competitors to that company is much easier because you've got marketing people and salespeople doing that for you. And if you're in marketing and sales, you're doing it for yourself, right? So the activities that we're talking here are a little bit easier, but 15 minutes to start, building up to an hour. So if you've accepted a bird in the hand role, do you have a strategy to get your first choice role or company? So what do I mean by that? One of the principles I teach is that we all have two runways in our life. We have, when you're in transition, you have an emotional runway and a financial runway. The financial runway usually lasts longer than the emotional runway. Many of you have probably experienced that. So when you decide that emotional runway, so I'll give you a good example of where often taking a bird in the hand role is the best thing for someone. When somebody comes to me and they have been in transition for a long time, over a year, in some cases over 2 years, right? And so now that's a long distance from what they've been doing, and it makes them less attractive in the marketplace, in a reverse, risk averse hiring climate that has been around for the last couple of years. So the idea is, let's get you landed, because once you land, everything that you do is 10x more effective. You will be able to get easier connections. You will be able to have easier conversations with people, because it doesn't look like you're going to have a conversation and then, oh, they're going to feel obligated. Can we making an introduction, et cetera. Recruiters are going to be far more responsive to you. So as an example, clients who have been in the onboarding program after like 6, 8, 9 months, they're starting to get recruiter calls at least a couple of times a month, and sometimes once a week. And they were not getting that activity sometimes in their pre-landing. So it just raises exponentially. So once you land, you're getting paid to continue to build your network and look for the job that you're looking for. So let me go back to that person that said, I'm in banking now and I want to go into product management, and not necessarily in banking, didn't know what he wanted to do. Okay, so the first thing is to land in the career, because he's at the end of his emotional runway for sure, land a role in the financial, in the discipline that he's known for. That's going to be the shortest distance from where he is to his next role. But as soon as he gets in there, what does he need to do? He needs to take that goose egg of a network that he said he has 0 in the place that he wants to go. And once he's getting paid again by somebody, put that time in every week to build that network to get into that other role. That's a bulletproof strategy, as opposed to what typically happens is, I call it bird in the hand rather than something you settle for, because unfortunately, for most folks in a different climate, when you settled for a role, you settled in afterwards, right? So, okay, well, I'm here, and now, well, my emotional runway is halfway filled. My financial runway is filled. I'm going to stick it out, and then that distance of the memory of the frustration of this job search goes away, and you don't do the things you need to do. So making sure that you don't settle in, that you keep something going. Refreshing and updating your target list, company list. You always want to have that. You may go to a conference or trade show and you go, oh, there's somebody, that company is on my target list. I'm going to go over and talk to that person. And, even though I may not be ready to change now, I'll have a LinkedIn contact and somebody inside that company, and I can get some information on it. And I have a contact there if something comes up that's available for me. Are you strategically curating contacts in those companies that, as I just described, in those target companies? Are you tracking your current or your target industry trending specifically? This is so important. There are plenty of people who say, I didn't see it coming, but I should have, right? Anybody in supply chain who hasn't figured out that as much as they are coveted and needed now, there's many scientists working on eliminating the need for the human element and trying to figure out how data and AI is going to make that problem much simpler going forward, which means there's going to be more of that and less of them, right? You have to be looking at what are the trends. When you do that, and actually one of my clients said, Pat, I know all the trends in my industry because I've been posting once a week on LinkedIn, and I look for articles that are talking about the trends in my industry because it's good for my brand. And it's now a byproduct of posting. I learned that. So that's that's a system, right? I post and I learn at the same time. And have you created a 12-month self-development plan? So I just worked with a client today, and we just identified, we use LinkedIn to identify where we might find the best executive marketing program. So she's employed, she's in my onboarding program, but she wants to elevate. So we went in and we did searches on I think we did 10 top business schools that have online programs. And we identified how many people from the business schools graduated, went into the industries that she is in and are in marketing. So we found out of those schools, like she said, well, Georgia Tech, it's right here in my backyard. But when we did that LinkedIn search, what we found is lots of people went to the Georgia Tech graduate program. Lots of people went into technology, no surprise, from Georgia Tech, but hardly anybody who graduated from Georgia Tech in that business school is in marketing. It was less than 0.3%, right? So that's not a well-known degree or course or rule of study in there, right? So, but we're creating a development plan so that she elevates her marketing knowledge for her next role, right? So that's important there. And this is what you want to, this is just a reminder. These numbers are important. I'm going to share something why I show this today. As you're looking at that bird in the hand, and we talk about things, it's like, I've talked to clients and said, look, right now you've got a net loss of, like the 3,300 at the 175, you got a net loss of 3,300 a week. And if we can get you landed and get that cash flow in, look at what we can do down the road in 15,000 a month. So I know anybody can do the math, but somebody told me, I love that chart. I have to put it up on my desk. I just have to remind me. The more important one is this one, because I'm talking about, refresh and recharge and things that you look at differently. Here's the difference in the offer versus a target comp when in a 5,000 or 10,000 or 15 or 20, just to realize that at the end of the day, when there's an opportunity, and I've had people call, I turned it down. There was a $5,000 difference than what I was looking for. That's $400 a month. I mean, some people spend that on Starbucks, right? But it gets you into the role. So looking at it and saying, really, what am I going to look at for the end of the year? And how maybe I rethink this? Because if you rethink and say, yeah, but Pat, you know what? That's $5,000. I'm going to give you a really good example. That's $5,000. And then when all my raises are based on that. And then, 5 years down the road, I've started at that 500 below, and that's all, do the math. And you all are finance people. That's all going to add up. Guess what? Had somebody who took that 5,000, this was a year ago, got a new job, and got a $30,000 increase. 12 months after she took the $5,000 hit, got a new job, $30,000 increase. Net, it was a win, right? And she got off the street and got the activity that she needed to generate, right? So in the days when when companies kept people for 10, 15 years, that idea of now I've reset my comp, remember that in 17 states, they can't ask you what you used to make. And that law is gaining momentum. California just put out a fabulous new law. And if you're in my LinkedIn group, and if you connect with me, I can put you into that private group. I posted an article about California's law. You can't ask somebody what they were making in the past. You have to have full transparency. You have to tell them exactly what the job that they're talking to you about is what the range is for that pay. Inside of California company, if you want to know what the other people with your title in your department are making, they have to tell you. And no longer, even in California, well, in any California company, and if you put the job out to a recruiter and you say, oh, don't tell them what the comp is, if it's a California company, the recruiter has to tell you exactly what the comp is, right? So there's lots and lots and lots more transparency, right, coming along. But when you look at this and say, okay, if I take a little step back, I now don't settle in, I don't need to tell them what I'm currently making. I can leverage whatever it was that I really wanted. That's the next number plus something that you're putting out there. And I do this all the time with my clients. It's absolutely capable to do that. So reminder. I'm going to quickly go through this. I'm going to hand these slides out, but this is just an important step. And if you're on tonight's call, I'm going to go through this in a little bit more detail tonight, but I didn't want to leave this off because it is such an important part of getting this recharge and fresh is have a plan, #have a plan for your day and for your week. And it's especially important because when you're in transition, sometimes you let your day be taken away. And for that matter, even when you're not in transition, the company takes your day away, and then it's school, practice, and then spouse and all of the other things, right? But when you really plan it out, really have a plan, you can take back control. And that planning starts with routines, right? So we talked about getting routines, and it starts with morning and evening routines, but I always start with evening routine. And I did this way because people kept saying to me, Pat, I don't get the difference between a routine and the shutdown, right? So an evening routine sets you up. That's why I start there, because that sets you up for a great morning. And anybody will tell you that if you're going out and you're training for any activity, that you want to make sure that you get good, solid sleep. You can't do anything without that. No blue screens an hour. So this is a good evening routine to be able to be up and refreshed and hit the ground running, to be fresh and recharged, to maximize the rest of the year. No blue screens 1 hour before you go to sleep. So I'm an avid reader, but I don't read on any devices in the evening. That's maybe saving me from my 44 years. That's when I read fiction, because if I read a nonfiction, I'll be thinking about how I will take action with it all night. So I read a fiction book, and I read it, a solid book, the good old fashioned book. You set things out that will minimize resistance in the morning. So, in Atomic Habits, he talks about if you want to exercise, the old cliche, I put your exercising clothes out, but you'll see when I do the morning, there's things that you can do to get you ready for the morning the night before, and you do some unwinding activities. So for me, an example of that is, my cup of hot tea in the evening is my trigger, my reading nonfiction, and then I do an end of day gratitude journal. That sort of gives a trigger to myself that this is the end of the day, I'm shutting down. And that gets me consistency, which is the whole point of this, right? Then here's the work shutdown, right? So this is so important. Whether you, again, no matter what your status, working, non-working, the goal is to develop a routine or ritual that will enable you to turn off work and focus on what I call your 5 to 9. Now, I know that it's naive to think that there's really a 9 to 5. It's really, at best it's 8 to 6, and that's even stretched. But you got to put those boundaries up, and especially if you want to take the actions that I'm talking about. So you decide your target shutdown time. You set aside scheduled time for a routine. You clear your urgent messages so that they're not niggling at you and zapping your energy. You identify anything that's bouncing around inside your head. Remember, I said don't do that, and you get it down on paper, because that gets it out of your head. You identify your top 3 actions for the next day, the night before. Done. When you get up in the morning, hit the ground running. You make sure you have what you need to hit the ground running on your number 1 action plan. So if you have your action plan and it needs something that a file, it needs some information that you need to have ready in order to really take action, you have that ready. It's the business version of putting your sneakers and your running shorts out to go running in the morning. And in the wise words of Elsa, let it go, turn away and slam the door. I actually had to force myself to listen to that Disney song in order to be sure I had the words exactly right on there. But Elsa, it may be a little cliche, but she's right. Let it go, slam the door, and spend some time creating moments in your evening, and the power moments would tell you how to do that. And then, so here's the morning routine. So now you've had a good evening routine, and the goal in the morning is to ground you and prepare you to proactively approach your day, not reactively, but to have proactive, right? So it helps you get a positive mindset, and it absolutely impacts the rest of the day. It really reduces stress, and it's less about the length of time and more the consistency. So I have a 1 hour morning routine that I've had for years, but 30 minutes is fine. 20 minutes is fine. Anything that grounds you and you start your day saying, I have had control over something big. I've had control over that time. I happen to start with my gratitude journal, and you saw the end of the day that ends there. And this is a 6 minute and 12-second video that I have watched every day since I found it, which was 2018, 2017. I don't know when it first came out. It's listed on there. And it just reminds me every morning, in the line that just grounds me every day, is it says, live this day as if it's your first day and your last day. And that gives me perfect bookends for how I think about every single day. It may be, this is just an example, it may be a little bit of meditation. Meditation can be 5 minutes, and you don't need a candle in dark room. Meditation is just quietness and getting inside and your head in a different way by breathing. Reading, and that's when for me, it's nonfiction. Journaling, I do a few pages of journaling, and then some exercise, right? So these are just examples. Everybody's is different. The length of it is different. It's the consistency and the intention to do things the evening before that set you up for success the next morning. And then when you start your morning routine, You clear out urgent emails, messages, anything that's come in. Now we have Slack channels and LinkedIn and everything else. You review your top 3 action items, reprioritize if needed. Maybe something came in during the night, you need to reprioritize one of those top 3. And then here's what you do. You just begin to work on your top priority action item. It's so simple. Everything that really works in the world is really super simple, honestly. And again, this begin to work on your top priority, just take one step in it. Even if it's something when you get it picked out and you get it lined up and then you jump in on it first thing, all of the procrastination is eliminated because it's there, it's on your schedule. The to-do is in front of you and you're hopping into it. Happens. I have several recommended reading books here at the end. And again, I'm going to put these slides in a Dropbox for everybody. I recently had dinner with Juliet Funt. And if you recognize the name Funt, yes, her father is Alan Funt. The You're on Candid Camera. She laughs just like he used to. It was amazing. It was like I was sitting across from him. It's my second required reading. And if you want to get to understand her work, she has this wonderful podcast interview that I have the link for here. And I really strongly recommend it, but it really helps you think about boundaries because we need white space in order to really do the best work. And I think, yeah, and then these are some other recommended reading there. And then all I say is, I hope this was informative. I'd love for you to take those notes, take some action, and take one small step. And then it's just really simple. After that, you just don't give up. You just keep going. So I hope that was helpful. I have time for questions. I said 6:30. Everything is, I got some things ready, Joyce, for my 7:30 start. So I've got, I could do 10 minutes of questions if anybody has any. And if there are none, that's good too. Hey, Leora.
Hi, how are you, Pat?
I'm good. How are you?
Just fine, thank you. I'll send you a message later.
Okay.
So anybody
Awesome.
have any questions?
You just want to get started. I can see that. You got your notes. You're ready to get going. So I hope this is get you started and try to weave in some things that are the top priorities of this. And again, if you have time to stop by this evening, just send me a note and somebody here may have the link to. You can actually just go to bulletproofyourcareer.com/Zoom and you can register there and you should get the link before the meeting starts. Sebastian?
May I? Yes.
Yeah, of course.
First of all, thank you for this awesome presentation. Really, it helps a lot. As you can hear, I'm originally from France. Mm-hmm. And you said everything was so interesting, but you said past performance, no matter how great, is no guarantee for a future employment. Mm-hmm. And what else? When you are looking for a job, which is, mm-hmm. I'm looking for a job because I was not allowed, well, for any reasons, I was not allowed, because of visa, I was not allowed to work, to be employed in the US until I had the green card like 3 years ago, etc., etc. So a part of your past experience, okay, I have my personality, I have my personal talent, and really your presentation is awesome. But this is not something, or tell me if I'm wrong, that employers would buy.
Actually, they buy your personality more than they buy your skills. So let me clarify something. 2 things. What do I mean by that? You have to have some basic skills, right? I mean, the minimum basics for the job. But at the end of the day, I can tell you that if they like you, you can be an A- and a B+ player, and if they like you better than the A+ player, that's going to carry the day. They're going to say, "This is some." I had CEOs say to me, they interview the slate of candidates, and they say they were all great candidates, but I think I'm going to go with Mike. And I said, "Great. What's the tipping point?" They said, this was an exact quote I'll never forget. "I couldn't imagine spending 6 hours on a plane with John. He's brilliant, brilliant. He can do the job better than anybody. I couldn't imagine doing that, right? So a couple of things. So know that it's a combination, minimum skills, and then do you fit the culture based on their assessment? And are you going to be a good colleague, right? That's a piece of it. I want to explain something because I may have confused, and I want to be sure. When I say past performance isn't a guarantee of future employment, that's less about when you're job searching. It's less about they're going to look at your past performance. If you say, I did this job, but I got fired, I didn't do well, or no, I didn't achieve that, or I didn't accomplish that. They're not going to hire you without a decent track record, for sure. So when I refer to past performance is when you're in the role and people go in and they say, all right, especially if you have had a surprise exit, you never expected to leave your company, and now you're going, okay, I got to work extra hard here so that it doesn't happen again. That is a false premise today, that you can work extra hard, you can over-deliver, overperform, you can out-deliver, outperform, and you will still be out of a job if circumstances change. But to be clear, when you're interviewing, they are looking for, they use your achievements as a safety net for them to say, okay, done, and we like him, good, let's make the offer. Does that make sense?
Yes, but, and sorry, just to finish, when you get an interview, and that's my point, it's, it's not about me, it's for me, it's just, how do you open the door? Well, I agree with what you say, but what you're saying, but it's, how do you open the door without telling about your past experience?
Oh, you're going to tell your past experience. That's what I'm trying to say, is that when you're interviewing, you're certainly going, they're going to ask you. I mean, they've got your resume. They're going to say, how did you achieve this? And how did you tell me more about the mergers and acquisitions that you handle, right? They're going to do that. You're going to tell your past experience. This is, when I talk about past experience not being the predictor, it's when you're in the role, actively in the role, and believing that you don't have to do you don't have to keep networking, you don't have to connect with people, you don't have to do anything else to bulletproof yourself for the next job. When you're in the job, as long as you do a great job, you're going to have that role. Everybody on this call who's not in a role right now can sit there and go, I was doing a great job, and here I am, right? So you are, Sebastian, do not confuse. When you're in that role, you are going to have to say, these are my achievements. This is how I led that. Matter of fact, you're going to have to say, this is what I did. This is what you want to be prepared for. This is what I did. This is how I did it, which helps them identify whether you match their style. What I did, how I did it. And then the thing that most people leave off, that's the most important piece of the story. And this is why it mattered. Because you could tell a story about what you did and how you did it. And for that company, it could have been the thing that saved them from, market share crash, right? Well, save them from something that could have destroyed the business. But if you don't tell that part and the other company listens to it and goes, well, we've done that too, right? So in every Petri dish, how it mattered would be different. So you want to be really sure that you tell them, this is what I did, as they interview you and ask you, how have you done this? And have you ever done XYZ? Yes, this is what I've done. This is how I turned around. This is how I made sure that our integration to the new financial system was successful. This is what I did. This is how I did it. And this is why it mattered. Those are the three things they're looking for in the interview. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Helpful.
As long as you get the interview.
Yeah, you got to get the interview, which means you need to really work on your network.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Sebastian. I have a wonderful client in Orange County. Sebastian, you're in New York, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, he's in the building products industry, but from the south of France, and I will connect the two of you. It'll be a good contact. He's a wonderful networker. He's not in finance, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Patricia. Really appreciate it.
Remy, I'll connect you with Remy. Awesome. If there's any other questions, I have another minute. Otherwise, I will let you go on about your business, move about the cabin.
Pat, thank you so much. This was like absolutely amazing. The group is really so appreciative. And I would encourage everyone to reach out to Pat and also consider retaining her because just incredible upbeat skills that protect your career.
Awesome. And thank you for that. And if we are not first level LinkedIn connections, two things, be sure to connect with me. Just mention that you are on the FANG call so that I move them up to top and make sure I get those answered. And then once you're a connection, I'll be able to add you to our LinkedIn private group. And we have had over 2,600, I think is the number. I have to see tonight's number, but we've had over 2,600 people from my bulletproof community land since we started keeping track of that in March of 2019. Those are 2,600 doors, and there's about 4,600 people in that private group. And every single week people post jobs they've landed, and they post jobs within their companies. They post jobs because they've landed and recruiter called them about a role and they said, nope, I just landed, here's the role. So feel free, but you have to be a first level connection so that I can add you to the LinkedIn group, right? And Joyce, I will create a folder tomorrow morning, first thing. I may be able to do it tonight. If I have time, I'll do it tonight. It'll have, for everybody, you'll have the slides from tonight. So you'll have the information there. I'll also include my book list. It was a reading list I created after the first 100 calls. Some of the books I shared with you tonight are in there, but many others. And it's a good time to have those. So, and if I think of anything else, I'll put it in there. Okay, awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.